Night fell thick as tar over the narrow stretch of county highway that locals called the Whispering Road. No one knew why the wind there seemed to speak, though everyone agreed the sound began after the old bridge collapsed years ago, claiming 3 lives. That night, Jordan drove home from a late shift, half asleep, headlights slicing through fog. His radio flickered between stations until static drowned out every word. Then, through the static, something whispered his name. He blinked, glanced at the empty passenger seat, and gripped the wheel tighter. The road curved, trees arching overhead like ribs, and a shadow moved across the lane. He hit the brakes, heart pounding. Nothing there, only branches swaying. Then he saw the figure standing in the rearview mirror, pale, soaked, eyes glinting like wet stone. It was gone the next instant, but the whisper stayed, repeating his name in a broken breath. Jordan floored the gas, desperate to reach the next town's lights. He didn't make it that night. His car was found idling on the shoulder, door open, engine running, driver's seat empty. Police marked it an accident, but the engine showed no damage, no skid marks, no sign of struggle. Only muddy footprints leading from the car to the woods, and ending abruptly by the collapsed bridge. Weeks later, travelers began hearing voices when crossing the same route. A woman's laughter, a child's call for help, sometimes the faint hum of a song. Locals now roll up their windows, pray under their breath, and never stop until they've left the road behind. Every year, someone new vanishes there, their names whispered into the night wind like a list that never ends. And somewhere under that bridge, something breathes, patient, hungry, calling to the next driver who won't believe in ghosts until it's too late. Long after the town forgot it existed, the Harrington property still stood, sunken behind thick hedges and twisted trees. Its windows reflected nothing. Teenagers dared each other to spend a night inside, but none stayed until morning. When Julia moved to the town, she thought the stories were small-town folklore. Then she found a for rent sign nailed to the gate, weathered but recent. Cheap rent, old charm. She couldn't resist. Inside smelled of dust and forgotten air. Portraits hung crooked, faces scratched away, and the floorboards sighed under each step. Julia laughed off the unease, set her things in the upstairs bedroom, and turned on a lamp. Its bulb flickered, revealing faint handprints on the wallpaper, small, like those of a child, reaching upward. She wiped them away, but they returned by morning, smeared higher each time. Nights grew colder. The walls whispered when the wind rose. Doors she'd locked opened themselves. Once, she woke to soft humming downstairs, a lullaby she'd never heard but somehow remembered. The next morning, every clock in the house read 3:17, though their batteries were dead. That was when she noticed something new carved into the banister. Still here, the neighbors wouldn't approach the property. An old man finally told her, "That house keeps whoever answers it." She tried to move out the next day, but the road twisted back to the same gate. She never made it beyond the hedges. A month later, the landlord placed another for rent sign out front. Evan collected forgotten media, lost films, broken records, discarded tapes. At a flea market, he found one unlabeled VHS, black plastic scuffed, tape slightly warped. Curiosity won. That night, he slid it into his player. No title screen, no music, only static, then a dimly lit room. A chair stood in the center, ropes dangling. A whispering voice murmured from somewhere behind the camera, too low to make out that he watched 10 minutes before realizing the room on screen was his own basement. Same cracked tiles, same shelves. His breath caught. Then a shape entered the frame, tall, masked, dragging something heavy. The tape ended abruptly, screen black. But when Evan ejected it, his TV didn't go dark. The camera feed still showed the basement. Live this time. He ran downstairs, heart thudding, but the space was empty. Only the faint scent of earth. When he came back up, the tape was gone. The next night, he heard footsteps below. He grabbed a flashlight, crept down again. The light hit the chair, now sitting in the middle of the floor exactly like on the tape. By morning, Evan's house was quiet. Police found no sign of forced entry, no struggle. Only the chair, its legs dragging lines into the dust, as if something had circled it over and over, waiting. Weeks later, another collector bought an unmarked VHS from a pawn shop 2 towns away. Mara moved into her new apartment and quickly noticed the unit across the hall was always dark. The mailbox bore no name. Sometimes she heard movement inside, faint scraping, like furniture dragged slowly across the floor. One night, she saw a thin crack of light beneath the door. A shadow passed by, tall and narrow, pausing as though it sensed her watching. She told the landlord, who frowned and said, "That place hasn't been rented in years." But the noises continued. Soft knocks came from her own walls now, in sets of three, always near 3 a.m. She recorded one of the sounds. When played back, the knocks turned into whispers, faintly repeating her own name. Finally, she slid a note under the neighbor's door. "Please stop. You're scaring me." The paper slid back moments later. Same sheet, same handwriting. But it now read, "Don't look at me again." 2 nights later, fire alarms blared through the building. Smoke poured from the hall. Firefighters found Mara unconscious by her doorway, clutching her phone, a video still recording. In it, a tall figure of smoke and shadow crawled from the neighbor's apartment and disappeared into hers. The next morning, the neighbor's door was sealed shut with new locks. No one admitted putting them there. In a forgotten mountain town, travelers often stopped at the Rose Hill Inn, drawn by its antique charm. But few stayed more than one night. The manager, Mr. Keene, kept a ledger written entirely in red ink, recording every guest's name, room number, and departure time. Strangely, the last column was always filled, time of death. When Thomas checked in after a blizzard stranded him, he joked about it. Mr. Keene only smiled. "Everyone leaves eventually," he said. That night, the power failed. Candles flickered in the lobby as Thomas went to fetch blankets. Passing the front desk, he saw his name already inked in the ledger, under time of death. 3:02 a.m. He laughed nervously, thinking it a prank, and returned upstairs. But as the clock neared 3, someone knocked. He opened the door. No one there. A moment later, the knock came again, from inside the closet. By dawn, his room was empty, sheets tangled, window open to the snow. When the blizzard cleared, a new name appeared in red beneath his. The next travelers. The inn still advertises online. Rooms always available. The ledger always ready. Nadia's grandmother had an ornate mirror passed down generations, rumored to reveal truths unseen. When Nadia inherited it, she laughed off the superstition. She hung it in her hallway, and that night saw herself walking past twice. The reflection lagged, then smiled after she was gone. Each day, her reflection changed slightly. Darker eyes, thinner face, the faint curve of a grin she didn't make. Eventually, it began moving before she did, turning its head slowly, watching her from inside the glass. She covered the mirror with a sheet. In the morning, it was uncovered again. The reflection stood closer than possible, as if pressed against the other side. Nadia smashed the glass, shards scattering across the floor, but her reflection remained, fractured, watching from every piece. Her apartment stayed silent after that. Only once did a neighbor hear something. The sound of glass grinding, like someone stepping carefully across a floor full of mirrors. In the summer of '97, a group of counselors reopened an abandoned camp to save money. The cabins smelled of rot, but they cleaned, painted, and prepared for children due in 2 weeks. On the third night, they found a notebook under one bunk, filled with names and dates, ending with a note. They never left. At first, they thought it was a prank. Then one counselor, Dana, vanished during her night watch. They found her flashlight at the lake's edge, beam pointing into black water. The notebook had a new line. Dana returned. Every night after, something walked the paths, leaving wet footprints on dry soil. When dawn came, another name appeared. By the 5th night, only one counselor remained, hiding in the mess hall. She heard humming outside, Dana's voice, calling her to come see the sunrise. No one ever reopened the camp again. It stands rotting by the water, notebooks scattered across tables, waiting for new names. Emily worked night shifts at an emergency call center. One evening, she received a call from a trembling voice whispering, "He's inside my house." She followed protocol, kept the caller talking, dispatch police. Then the voice said her own name. She froze. "Emily." It whispered, "Don't turn around." Her headset crackled. The line died. She checked the call log. No record of an incoming number. Minutes later, the door to the dispatch room creaked. She turned, but no one stood there. Only her empty chair reflected faintly in the glass panel. But in the reflection, the headset lay on the desk, still vibrating with a faint, steady breath. When police arrived, they found the office empty. Call records erased. The supervisor swore Emily had clocked out hours before. Now, every few weeks, the nightline rings once at 3 a.m., a whisper asking, "Is it safe to come out?" Marcus bought an antique camera at a yard sale, fascinated by its craftsmanship. The seller warned him never to use fresh film. Marcus laughed and loaded a new roll. His first photos came out perfect until he noticed figures in the background that hadn't been there. A girl in old clothes behind a tree, a man standing at his window, closer in each frame that he tried burning the negatives, but they wouldn't catch. The next morning, his walls were covered in printed copies of the same photo. Himself asleep in bed, the man standing beside him. Neighbors reported flashes of light in his house for several nights. Then silence. When authorities entered, every surface was plastered with photographs, all showing the same scene. The man finally facing the camera, smiling. The antique camera was gone. A week later, it appeared for sale again, price lowered, seller unknown. Years passed, and the stories tangled. The road, the house, the mirror, the inn. No one saw the connection until a historian named Claire noticed the same symbol hidden in each, a spiral carved into wood, glass, paper. She traced it to a vanished cult devoted to the listener, a being they claimed gathered voices through fear itself. Claire traveled to each site, recording evidence, until one night she woke to whispers repeating all the names from every story. Her recordings bled together, voices of the lost, calling her name now. The spiral began to appear everywhere she looked, drawn into dust, etched into frost. She realized the stories weren't separate. They were echoes of the same hunger, something moving through people, places, objects, leaving silence in its wake. Her final entry ended abruptly with a line scrawled across her notes. Now you've heard it too, and somewhere, faint and patient, a whisper speaks your name.